In a world where the importance of sleep and airway health for kids is gaining so much momentum, we're here to provide you with a clear pathway through the maze of information. Join us as we connect with experts, share real-life stories, and break down the complexities that surround this critical issue. From screening techniques to collaboration with our medical colleagues, we're here to empower you with actionable insights and a supportive community. Let's navigate the path together to healthier sleep, brighter futures, and happier families. This is ASAP Pathway. Hi, everybody. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of ASAP Pathway Podcast. I am your host today, Dr. Stacy Ochoa, and I am really looking forward to the conversation ahead of us with my friend and colleague, Dr. Chmura. I always make sure I try to say his last name correctly. Welcome, Dr. Liu.
Hey, thank you.
We have a lot to talk about today. Actually, the last time we just were sitting on a Zoom call, catching up with each other, the entire conversation was, we were like, this should be a podcast. What we just said should be a podcast. So then we were like, okay, let's just stop talking. And then let's set up a podcast because it was just too good. And I hope we can capture the essence of our original phone call, plus some things since we've talked. But for those of you who do not know Dr. Chmura, I would like to just read something. I mean, this is not an exhaustive description of him at all. He's exceptional. I'm just summarizing this so we can dive in today. He's an orthodontist that sold his practice in 2022. He's spending his time currently teaching, coaching, and consulting in other orthodontic offices. Dr. Chmura founded Egghead Orthodontics as a teaching, coaching, and consulting resource for other orthodontists to learn to evaluate and incorporate technology, achieve great results in fewer appointments, and empower their teams to achieve more than they ever thought possible. His passion for helping others led him to develop the concept of complete orthodontics, including airway, bite, and exceptional aesthetics in addition to aligning teeth. Without further ado, welcome, Lou.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Really I'm excited. I'm excited to have you. I'm actually going to attempt to take my reading glasses off. We'll see. I might have to put them back on. I'm 49, so this year I'm going to be 50.
You're a youngster.
Oh, God love you. I'm just I don't know what 50 is going to be like, but they say it's the new 40. So whatever, bring it on. I wanted to just dive in. First of all, we were just talking and we cut it off how we met each other. And I think you had mentioned you knew Tracy. She's my partner in ASAP, one of the partners in ASAP Pathway, Tracy Nguyen, because you reached out to me about 4 years ago through Facebook. And I read it's always so nice when someone reaches out and just says, hey, way to go. What you guys are doing is right on. Keep going. I just want you to know I'm cheering you on, kind of thing. And it took me back because, as you know, there's a lot of controversy, if you will, about the topic. So I always kind of squint when I open my messenger box sometimes, like, what's this going to be? But you were telling me how you first met Tracy and what your thoughts were, and then why you reached out to me.
So, yeah. So I've been in this space since 2000, probably 2006, mainly because of a personal. I have sleep apnea, and I've done darn near anything you can do to solve it. So, I have a personal interest in the subject. But we put together a 2-day course in 2012 to teach orthodontists about the subject. And I ended up teaching. It was Dave Paquette and I for a few years, and then he dropped out, and I pretty much carried the ball. And along that journey, I found out a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And I went to a ton of courses for general dentists and how to do sleep appliances. And then there's, myo brace courses and, all these different things. So I feel like I'm in a weird position that I have both sides of this equation. I can see them from both sides. And I knew where we should be heading. And then I was watching Tracy, and I thought, she is talking about using MSE. She's a general dentist, and she's talking about using MSEs. And most of the orthodontists I was talking to didn't want to do that because, there's too much liability, and I'm going to have my oral surgeon place them, and all these sorts of things. And I'm thinking, but if you're not using them, if you're not diagnosing the the horizontal, you're missing the boat. And I'm watching this and I'm saying, this is a general dentist who's doing it right. And then I basically accosted her. She was at an MSE course that I was going to with Juan Moon. And I saw her, and she's so full of life. My God, she was sitting in this bright yellow outfit. I thought,
she's so tiny. She's so tiny.
She's just a little thing.
But she's so mighty. Yeah.
And
don't underestimate her size. Do not underestimate.
No, it's your own risk. And I thought,
your own risk.
The way she's reviewing the literature and sharing what she knows in a really quite an academic way, without actually being in a university doing it, was impressive. And then Stacy, I didn't know you from Adam, but I figured if you hung out with her, you're probably okay.
Yeah,
and
I keep
heard
good
that
company.
You're talking about vitamin D, and you're talking about all the other things that are not really orthodontics. And I thought, they got the whole thing covered. So I just saw, I thought there was a little bit of FOMO. I'm thinking, boy, I wish I could be part of that group, that group of three. But I also understood that you had a vision of what you were trying to do. And I just wanted you to be encouraged, because you're right. This is a place where there's a ton of arrows coming.
Yeah.
And from all sides. It's not just orthodontists or just general dentists or
100%.
Everybody takes a stance. And I tend to think in terms of principles. And one of them is, if there isn't solid data, 100% solid data, everybody has a strong opinion, and a really strong opinion. And I think we have better data than we're given credit for.
I agree.
But it's different than what we're used to. And so people, when I say we, orthodontists or general dentists, it's just outside our normal realm, and we get our blinders on. It's hard to recover from your first teacher.
Okay? It really is, because it's ingrained in you, and it's hard to, I tell you what, Mike DeLuke, I know you have talked to Mike and been on his podcast, and he is amazing, and he is teaching as an orthodontist. And wow, to be able to influence residents that early on, because unlearning something and relearning something, it's really hard to unlearn something that you've been indoctrinated with. So hopefully, Lou, the future of academia in the next 5 years plus, as the data is released, hopefully we see this incorporated in the teaching of the school, on the level of the resident or the dental student, that there is a place for looking at what Kevin Boyd and Steve Carsonson referred to as the craniofacial respiratory complex. Yeah. That it influences, there's an airway above it, behind it, underneath it. I mean, you've got an airway complex, and we as oral physicians, primary care dentists, orthodontists, pediatric dentists, we influence that. And that has to be discussed, and it's not being talked about. And that's the other thing. People listening that aren't doctors, maybe they're parents, or, they're a patient in a wondering if this would apply to them and their family members. It's, this is not taught right now in traditional schooling. Now, hopefully that's changing. I know Audrey Yoon is incorporating this within Stanford, and she's doing amazing things there. So, but arrows are flying all over the place. So we have to be very, it can't just be opinions. It has to be, we don't want to throw out anecdotal evidence of what we are seeing in our practices and with our patients, because that is part of evidence. It's not just papers.
You don't want to stop doing that, because that's where you decide how you're going to measure stuff and what might work, and then you run the studies to do it. But you're right. Even Audrey did a wonderful lecture at the AAO last year, but just got crucified afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole cadre of orthodontic pundits. In fact, there's a society where they have an NDA. They're not allowed to say they're part of this society, that they sit there and their main goal is to try and undermine anything related to airway. I know that's crazy sounding, but it's true. And I'm thinking, how can this be in this day and age where... Is
it like a little secret society?
Yeah.
That's part of another bigger association?
No, they just all got together and said, we got to fight against this. This isn't right what they're doing.
I picture them meeting like in a basement somewhere.
Well, I don't know if it's like that,
I don't know what's happening.
When I found out, I thought, oh my God, really? No wonder,
That's
because
upsetting.
I get a lot of arrows. But I got a strong back, and honestly, I figure, you know what? It's not about me, and it's not about you, and
right.
It's not, we tend to make it about that. I need to be able to do my extractions. Well, extractions cause OSA. Both extreme positions are wrong.
Exactly.
It's really, at the end of the day, Stacy, it's about what's best for the patient. How do we take the best care of our patients? And honestly, if you don't pay attention to the airway, if that's not even part of your diagnosis, which often it isn't, then you're not taking the best care of your patient, regardless of whether you're a dentist or an orthodontist.
I like what Ilya Lipkin said in one of our podcasts with him. Actually, we have a skeletal expansion course happening right now with him leading it. And he doesn't like the word airway orthodontics. This is a journey. We're all kind of figuring our way out. And once you see something, you get excited, and then everybody wants to say airway, airway, airway. He said, I like to call it comprehensive orthodontics, because it's looking at everything. You need to look at the airway. You need to look at the TMJ complex. You need to look at, the function. You need to look at the patient as a whole. And I'm like, I really like that. It's comprehensive. That patient is a full human being in the chair. Let's just, in dental school and ortho residencies, a lot of it is just, if people could understand, they literally just set these little models down on tables. And it's like, what would you do with this case? And you're literally holding a pair of teeth in your hands,
And honestly, if you're just looking at that, you're going to get one diagnosis.
You're going to get a diagnosis and a different treatment plan than someone that's pulling back and maybe looking at the airway and then the function, the tongue that sits between those teeth and the cheeks and the lips. And then, oh, wait, there's a nose above it. And there's a palate. And then, wait, there's a nasopharynx and an oropharynx. It's you got to look at everything around those white things that we are all so obsessed with. I mean, they're the kind of the train wreck. They're the bystander of the accident, really. I mean, it's just pulling back and looking at the why behind the crowding and why aren't there room for premolars? So let's ask why there's not room for the premolars that they're supposed to have.
The other thing is if you're doing that, and Ilya and I are good friends, have been for a long, long time. We were on the Sure Smile cab together. Brilliant. And we came up with the same basic idea separately, or we talked about it. doesn't really matter. I don't care so much who gets credit, but that's what you were talking about in my bio. Complete orthodontics is the same exact idea. Is why are we just focusing on airway at the expense of bite, at the expense of aesthetics? Again, I've gone to a ton of courses. I feel like I'm so singularly placed to understand both sides of this argument. And I've seen them use clear aligners. They say, okay, I'm going to do orthodontics. And their version of orthodontics is clear aligners. And then they tip all the teeth out because they're measuring the palate based on the teeth. And they tip them all out. And they get the airway problem better. But then they can't close the space and they can't get the bite right because everything is tipped out so far. So they got balancing interferences throughout the whole mouth. And they've just destined this person to potential problems with their jaw joints. And the aesthetics, they got a space behind their cuspids. But they fixed the airway. And I'm thinking, why not fix everything in the same treatment plan? We got to have orthodontists on board to do that. Because honestly, that's more than just aligners.
Yeah.
Doing aligners isn't doing orthodontics. Doing aligners is doing cartoonodontics.
I like that, cartoonodontics. And it's funny, we were talking, so in ASAP Pathway, we would have with Dr. Courtney Levine on Monday nights, we had, and now it's in our library, but she would do ClinCheck reviews with people. Now, Courtney Levine's background, I don't know if you know Courtney, Dr. Courtney Levine.
I don't know Courtney.
Okay, she used to be a general dentist, got into the airway aspect and realized, oh my gosh, I got to go back to ortho school. So she sold her high-end restorative practice and went back to ortho school, which is pretty painful, I would think, to do that. But she went back to ortho school because she understood what you were just saying. There are biomechanics that she's not understanding. And she said, when I first got in to ortho school, I had my whole airway general dentist mindset, and I don't want to lose any of those pieces. But she said, I learned a lot in the ortho residency of how, like, some of the things that people are doing are putting teeth at risk, or you can't expand so much that you now compromise periodontal health, or just the things you're saying. It is important to understand that Invisalign ClinCheck that you get back, that cartoon, there are unfortunately a lot of dentists and maybe even orthodontists that just accept the first ClinCheck they get because they think, oh, that's what it's going to do. Because if you don't understand the mechanics, the biomechanics, when you look at your ClinCheck and you think, oh, that's really going to happen, it's going to bodily move and expand like that. No, it's not. And that's why you have like 15 revisions. It's still not moving.
If you have 15, you paid for it 3 times.
Exactly.
You only get 5.
Yeah, you're right.
By then, the patient isn't wearing them and thinks you're a total idiot.
Yes, yes.
There's a way to avoid that, and that is in the diagnosis. That's starting from the beginning and starting with the diagnosis and saying, you know what? Let's get this right. Let's look at the airway. Let's look at the aesthetics. Let's look at the occlusion. And then let's design a treatment plan that addresses all of that. Quite frankly, if you normalize the anatomy, the skeletal anatomy as close as you can, you almost make straightening teeth easy. Okay? Because almost anybody can fix a class 1 mildly spaced case with aligners. Okay? That's fallen off a log. That you can use a line for. But if you really want to get to that point, you have to look at the anatomy. You have to look at it differently. How do you diagnose? How do you diagnose a transverse discrepancy? And I hear, well, it should be 38 millimeters. And I got a great slide. You know who Shaq O'Neal is? Shaquille O'Neal.
Yes.
His girlfriend is probably 1.5 feet shorter. And there's a picture of them coming. I said, Is it 38 for both of them? Well, first off, he's a massive man. I've seen him in person. He is a mountain of a man, right? You know his mouth has got to be massive.
Yes.
She's this little petite white girl, and I'm thinking they can't have the same width, right? And why would you measure between the molars? That was what we had back in the 50s. We got better ways to measure that now. There are a number of ways you can measure the skeleton. And if you're not using CBCT, it's harder.
Yes.
But if you're using CBCT, you can measure that. And I have a theory that I'm going to investigate over the next year. I'm going to take some of my old cases and I'm going to measure what the direction of the pull of the muscles are. And where is that relative to the angle of the teeth?
Interesting.
I have a feeling that's probably where we need to be. That's where the long axis should be, is bisecting that angle.
It's so interesting. I love this kind of stuff because when you put different minds together and we all see different perspectives, that's how change happens. We were talking about that earlier, the importance of collaboration, because there is... You might see a perspective. We might see a perspective. Sean Carlson or Ilya or Rebecca Bacow or Mariana Evan. I mean, you've got all these, Audrey Yoon. I mean, everyone has these amazing perspectives, and it's having these conversations and putting egos aside. And like you said earlier, I love this saying. It's from David McIntosh. He's an ENT out of Australia, but he said, I don't want to be right. I just want to get it right. And the only way we can do that is conversation and check the ego, and just say, what are you seeing? And that is the importance of talking about what we see in our practices. This was something interesting Mike DeLuke said too, with the, onset of HIPAA. Okay. I understand the importance of HIPAA, but what happened when all of this HIPAA stuff came to be, he said, I really think a lot of the past research, if you look at early orthodontics or any, research in medicine or dentistry, dental medicine, people were submitting cases from their practices. We had all this information and data coming from private practice and minds, anecdotally, patterns that we were all seeing within our practices. This doctor submitted 100 cases. This doctor submitted, and that's not happening anymore. We're not seeing private practice information and data like we used to, which is so crucial because we're all seeing different things. Everything is just academics. These are the 20 patients that presented in the clinic, or you know what I mean? It's
that's a whole subject there. Oh my goodness.
Yes, it is.
Get so frustrated. I remember coming out of school and thinking the literature is God. It's not God. It's the slab that Noah brought down, with the 10 Commandments, not Moses, sorry. Brings down, like, if it's in the literature, then it's on a slab from God himself. And as time's gone by, I've realized that there's politics, right? There's bias in the people deciding what's in the literature, and we don't have the proper studies for everything, and we never will.
That's the truth.
That
is the truth. We never will. Okay. So now what?
And so to say, well, for this airway thing, we're going to need to see a prospective study showing exactly this factor. And there's so many factors, there's so many specialties that we don't really know what to measure for yet. How are we going to do that study? And you're telling me you're going to let a kid lose brain power all through their childhood because you don't have a study? Really? I mean, I can't tell you how many kids I didn't treat for airway, but after we were done with phase 1, mom said, man, he's sleeping, and we did the the survey beforehand, the Michigan survey, the PSQ.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't put down that he wet the bed, but they sure told me after he stopped.
Yeah.
Right? And he's got friends now. And I mean, just a whole plethora of benefits way beyond straight teeth. Honestly, I can straighten teeth without breathing hard. That's not hard. And if that's all I did, I would just feel like, what a waste of a profession. Honestly, if that's all we did, we can do so much more to help people.
And it's funny too, Lou, I think there's going to be practitioners that are listening to this that say, but I don't want to do anything but straighten teeth. I don't want, they're like sticking their fingers in their ears like, la, 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 la. I don't want to hear what you're saying because they don't want to change their model. They don't want to ask more screening questions. They don't want to collaborate with the medical doctors. And it's like, okay, I guess if you want to stick your head in the sand and do that, I personally feel we know too much and it's supervised neglect. But I think their ethical obligation at the least is to understand how to screen. They should be asking the questions. And if all they want to do is straighten teeth, they don't want to do any skeletal expansion, and that's fine. Don't do it in your practice. You don't have to, but please refer appropriately to someone in town that might. I just think there are some docs out there, they don't want a cone beam because they don't want to see it. I mean, do you come across that ever?
Oh, gosh, yes.
I do too.
Absolutely.
And I'm kind of shocked.
It's the ostrich approach. If I have my head in the sand, then it's not going to eat me. The reality is it's going to eat you. Okay. I honestly don't think that you can make a specialty long-term out of just straightening teeth, because the AI has gotten better. Mm-hmm. The technology has gotten better. It's not just with aligners. I mean, it's with braces too. There are braces that are custom braces. Heck, you can print braces in your office now.
Yes.
Okay. That are indirect bonding. I mean, that you've done the setup on and put them on indirect. So yeah, the fact that we have this secret society where we can bend wires doesn't matter. If you don't know how to bend wires, that's okay. You can use SureSmile.
Exactly. They have it all, the mechanics. Exactly. They'll do it for you ahead of time.
Yeah. I mean, there's 1,000 possibilities beyond just straightening teeth. And honestly, I would love to see us as orthodontists jump on this bandwagon. Quite frankly, we know as much, probably know more about how the face and the teeth and everything grows than anybody.
I would say so as well. I know general dentists and pediatric dentists that are brilliant in understanding growth and development and craniofacial complex histology and all. Yes, I do. But the orthodontist is primed in that. You guys, I tip my hat to you. You guys learn that in your residencies and you are primed for that. And that's something Sean Carlson, and I think that's why you and I reconnected again, is because of Sean. I have followed Sean for years. I have a lot of respect for Sean and what he is doing. He is an out-of-the-box thinker in many ways. But I jumped on the CBCT bandwagon years ago, probably 8 years ago. So I was honored that he allowed me in one of his orthodontic courses when, they weren't letting anyone but orthodontists in, and he let me in. And he pretty much said what you just said. Like, look, I don't think we're going to have a long-term specialty on straightening teeth. We have to think outside the box because we're already losing the, class 1 malocclusion to your everyday primary care general dentist. Sure. We're losing that demographic. So now what? We're only going to see the really difficult skeletal cases. And we need to, it's just setting yourselves apart with the ability the life-changing ability that you have. There was an orthodontic blog. Oh, geez. There's so many orthodontic blogs, but there was one recently, and I don't know which one it was, but oh my goodness, there was some really prominent adult airway and sleep practitioners that aren't really on board with the pediatric aspect of this with orthodontics. They were on there just saying things like mouth breathing isn't necessarily bad. And I'm thinking, what in the heck? There is so much. The Karen Bonnick study alone was over 11,000 children over a 7-year period looking at neurocognitive and behavioral changes in a mouth breathing and snoring child. These kids did not have PSGs. They did not have a diagnosis of OSA. Let's just stop saying OSA anyway. I mean, that's right now projected to be maybe 5% of the population of children. And what is OSA? We're still trying to figure out how to even diagnose it. So can we just stop even saying that? Like, I get it. It's a little easier to figure out in adults, but if you're a skinny woman or you have dark skin or you are a child, right now, a lot of your airway issues are being underdiagnosed. So like it's just circular reasoning. You know, we're saying, oh, it doesn't help OSA. What is OSA? Well, I don't know. We're still trying to figure out what OSA is, but it doesn't help. So we need to just, why are we talking about this anymore? And it's just this circular conversation. And we know that just anecdotally, kids that aren't breathing well through their nose aren't sleeping well. They're not functioning well. They're not thriving well. And like you said, the before and afters with the PSQ and are just wow. And that's how I can't unsee that. You can't unsee that, Lou. Mm-hmm. So this is where we could take a room full of practitioners and say, okay, here's a patient. What's your diagnosis? And then, I mean, we can't even get to the treatment plan yet. We have to get to the diagnosis first. And you're going to come up with all kinds of different diagnoses because we're all looking at different things, right?
It's like the blind man and the elephant.
Yes.
We're all seeing a different thing. That's right.
Someone's seeing a tail. Someone's seeing the trunk. Someone's seeing the, and then from that, we're going to have different treatment plans. And that's what I think that's what patients need to understand too. Please understand that when you walk into a dentist office or an orthodontist office or a pediatric dentist, and they give you a diagnosis and a treatment plan, and you go to another one for a second opinion, you're going to get possibly another diagnosis and a treatment plan. It doesn't make them a bad doctor. It's just what are they looking at? So really empowering yourselves and being an advocate for your health as a patient and for your children's health is important. And then making sure you align with that practitioner and what are your goals as a patient for care and what are their goals for you as a practitioner. So like, Lou, what would you like to talk about regarding diagnosis and treatment plan?
I'd like to, I want to harp on the horizontal. I really do. It's not the only one, but it's the one that seems to be the least understood. And there are ways to measure that skeletally and really get it now, high vaulted palate. Okay. What in the world does that mean, Stacy? How do you know?
That's so true. What is a vaulted palate? We even had this discussion we had on a myofunctional therapist, and she was showing infants with vaulted palates. So we had some ASAP members going, how would you constitute a vaulted palate in an infant? And it was just kind of like, well, there's some subjective, there's not a lot of objective feedback.
Pay no attention to the man behind the screen at that point, right? And I think we can do so much more if we get together on let's measure the bones by measuring the bones, and let's measure the teeth by measuring the teeth. Miner did a great study on showing the angulation of the lower molars and the upper molars. Some of them had cross bites, some of them didn't. But the ones who didn't have cross bites sometimes we're very narrow.
Yes.
Okay, skeletally.
Sometimes more so than the
ones.
bilateral crossbite, the bilateral dental crossbite. They had a more narrow palate.
It's without the dental compensations.
Yes.
And that's what I'm talking about. In those situations, I don't want to see you do, we should probably differentiate when we say expansion. We should stop saying expansion on its own, because you can have arch expansion and you can have, let's call it sutural expansion, actual bony expansion. So which is it? If the teeth are all tipped in, do arch expansion all day long. If it's the jaw is narrow, widen the jaw. Now, how you do that, that's one of the problems we have, is we get into how before we get into what.
So true.
What is the diagnosis? That's the same thing we were talking about earlier with, I do Invisalign, therefore this treatment plan can fit into Invisalign because I think I can get there, as compared to, what do I want to accomplish? Well, the smile arc is off. I want to bring the incisors down. I want to widen this. I want to, you've got a whole list of things you're going to do. And I'm going to get rid of that balancing interference by rotating that molar. Now you've got a diagnosis that's different. And you may want to start with something other than aligners. And then you can go into aligners later when it's class 1 space.
When you've gotten, yes.
Okay. That's I'm not saying it's a bad treatment modality. I'm saying it is a treatment modality.
Not the only treatment modality.
Right. And if that's all you got, it's like saying, I want somebody to build my house with a hammer, which is great if all he's going to do is pound in nails. But if he has to cut some wood, a hammer's not the best option. Let's pick the best option in each case.
Right.
That's the whole concept of complete orthodontics. It's taken me 35 years to get this working the way it does. I look in, I see what's going on. I put all of that together in an instant and say, okay, what we need to do is start with this, and then we'll go to here, and then we'll go to here, and then we can finish up with whatever you want. If at that point you want braces, great. If you want aligners, that's fine too, whatever you want. But it's the thinking that goes into it. That's the idea, okay? And that's where I think we could collaborate.
Agreed.
Right? Some general dentists aren't going to want to do MSCs. Most are probably not going to want to do MSCs.
And there's orthodontists that really aren't comfortable doing MSC right now either.
Isn't that the truth?
I'm finding that too. I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. But, again, it's not something, they may have had one case in residency or something like that, or maybe they were taught it always had to be SARPy and surgically assisted. And I mean, everything's changing, and it's changing at lightning speed. So it's finding, and this is what's so true too, you've been in your journey and you've had a very unique journey. And this is where we were talking about legacy earlier. Yeah. Because there are a lot of courses out there, which is why we developed ASAP Pathway, because just like you, Lou, I mean, we were taking all the Healthy Start, MyoBrace, good grief. There's so many out there, and there's a place for some of that. I'm not saying there's not a place for it. It's just putting all the pieces together, pulling back, getting your diagnosis, understanding sleep health, understanding pediatric sleep health. It's not the same as adult sleep health. That the person in your chair, that's the other thing too. I was talking with Courtney Levine about is, let's not put the whole burden of making this human being in our chair. Let's not put that whole burden on. We have to fix everything. And I think sometimes when you go to these courses, I don't know if you came across this, but they have all these health problems. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to put a device in and it's going to get rid of everything. and I'll have people come up to me. My kid's still bedwetting. My kid still has ADD. My kid still has ADHD. My kid still has, IBS stuff, and they're still not sleeping. They're still tired in the day. They're still struggling in school. Look, this is a piece of the puzzle for sure. Craniofacial development is a part of this. But this is the importance of collaboration, is because you do need your ENT. You need your myofunctional therapist. We need the orthodontist, the general dentist. I need a primary care physician. I'm going to have a sleep physician on board. I might have a child with restless leg syndrome. I can expand, make room for the tongue, get some improved nasal volume. Wow, they're breathing so much better. The snoring is better. The mouth breathing's gone away. They're still tired. Well, if they have low iron and low vitamin D, which usually go hand in hand, you're going to have some issues with dopamine production and movement. And that's tied to ADHD. It's tied to restless leg syndrome, periodic limb movements. There's just so much. But it can feel like when you start this journey, like you're drinking from a fire hose.
It absolutely did. Oh, there was no question.
But
still does.
It still does. But you have to just breathe and go, okay, what am I going to focus on and do a little different than I did maybe last week, and just start doing things a little differently, screening differently, collaborating, just started having conversations. But like you said, with legacy, this is the beauty of collaboration, is your unique journey, Lou, has brought you to where you are 30 plus years later, and you have so much to offer. And I would hope I can't even believe I've been in dentistry over 30 years, but that I'm including my hygiene journey. I was a baby. But when we all put together our unique legacies and journeys and come to the table and share, man, that's where the learning starts.
It really is. It really is. And I've been blessed to be able to hang out with some unbelievably cool and gifted. I never feel like I'm the smartest person in the room. I'm Cousin Jethro, and I'm just absorbing it all.
Same.
But I think where I've been lucky is I've been to all these different things, and I always took the stance, I don't want one guru. Mm-hmm. I don't want that. I want to listen to all the gurus, and I want to see what the differences are. And sometimes you can see their biases. A lot of times just follow the money. If they get paid to tell you what they're telling you, I take that with a grain of salt. Doesn't mean they're wrong.
Exactly.
It just means, I treat it a little differently as data.
Yeah. Something to be considered. You just put that in your pocket and go, okay.
So in my journey, I got experience in CAD/CAM way back when a big screen for a computer, like a 2x3 foot screen, and was like $500 million.
Yeah.
Because it was the auto industries that were doing it. And my dad was head of plastics at Ford. So I got to see that way early, and I started realizing how much better we could do things with that, which is how I got into SureSmile. Okay. And I just realized right away, this is going to be a game changer. And 3D cone beam had to be better than 2D x-rays. It had to be. It was just intuitive. How, we didn't know. We're making it up at the beginning, and now we have a better idea. It was those sorts of experiences that I don't know. Well, that's another piece of what we do is help people put that together, because I'm unique because of my unique set of circumstances. Mm-hmm. And my abilities come primarily from my dad. He was a genius at taking stuff apart and putting it back together better. Mm-hmm. And that's what if I really got down to it, I don't think it's the stuff that Sean does is important. I can't do what Sean does. He's an incredible teacher. But I do something really well. And that is, I can take a process apart and look at it and chunk it into pieces and then say which pieces need to be thrown out and which pieces can be combined. And how can we put this together in a better sequence so that we can do the same things, but in less time? Because the thing we're not talking about is what's best for the patient.
Right.
That seems to be missing in most of these conversations. And honestly, in an orthodontic office, it's a 2.5 hour ordeal for them to come see you. Once you add everything in, their trip from their office to the school and wait for the kid and, go into the obligatory McDonald's afterwards. And, by the time they're all done, it's a half a day. If you can eliminate one of those, in Michigan, where I was, where it was low income and both parents have to work. So if you can eliminate, every time you eliminate a chance for them to go and say, can I have a half a day off to take my kid to the orthodontist? That's a benefit that people aren't marketing, and it's doable. It all starts, though, with diagnosis and putting it all together in one whole. So legacy-wise, that's what I'm looking at, is nobody has this set of experiences. And once I recognized these, I should say, they were there. I just didn't look at them. But once I did, the whole practice got easier. I was hiring for different people because I knew who I was and where I was going. I was marketing differently. Shannon's my business partner. We went on and looked at orthodontic websites, and especially the parts is what sets us apart. What sets these 20 apart was every one of them had a free initial exam. Every one of them did aligners of some sort. Some were diamond, some were gold, some were platinum. Nobody knows outside of orthodontics what that
they don't know what that means, right?
Okay. They all sound good.
That's to impress other orthodontists and not patients.
So I'm looking at websites saying, and you're marketing the same stuff the guy down the street is. How do you stand out from the crowd? Well, you've got to be able to tell your story, which is a function of all of your experiences. And so that's an area that Shannon and I are also working with practices on, to help them see that their uniqueness is them. And they can have whatever practice they want. But boy, I'll tell you what, when you go to dental school and ortho school, don't they drum dreaming out of your head? You come out and it's just, I gotta get this done, instead of what if I had all the time in the world and all the money in the world, how would I do it? That's what I've been doing, is saying, what would I do? And once I did that in the practice, it was so much better. I can tell you, 4 o'clock in an orthodontic practice is, one of my classmates in ortho school said, it's like somebody hit the hornet's nest at 3:30.
Yes.
Okay.
They're all coming.
Oh, God, everybody and their brothers there. The ones that were at 3 o'clock come late. The ones that are 4 o'clock come early because they got to get to band camp or to football practice or whatever. It is manic. Wasn't that way in our office. It was calm all day long because of the systems we put in place and how we train the staff and what we use for technology. It was different. So
isn't that the truth, though, with efficiencies and a team that has the same goals and vision as you have? And first of all, you've increased the happiness and the joy of the work environment. Everyone's working together. Everyone's on the same page. Patients feel that. It's palpable when they walk in and feel a happy team versus one that looks like their hair's all tousled and they're exhausted and they're like, you look busy, right? So the efficiencies, making sure teams are trained, because let's get real. We as doctors can say, I can do A, B, C, and D. Well, if we don't have a team supporting us, ain't none of that happening.
Right.
So you've got to have a team on board. I wanted to share before we close for today, and I got to have you back on because there's just so much to say. I wanted to talk about, you have a retreat coming up, and I wanted to go into that. So
April 25th through 28th, we are going to, when I do say retreat, I've spoken to 200, 400 people. I've been at the midwinter and I've spoken to a bunch of people. I've been to 1 million lectures, and I come back and my team looks at me like, oh my God, he learned something new.
So true.
Okay. And then what happens is we were never able to implement because I'm a little ADD And so what would happen is I'd go to another course and then I'd come back with another idea. And they just learned that it was better to hold off and this will pass. And the ones that didn't, then I got smarter as I went on. I went to fewer things. I was more deliberate about how I put it together. So April 25th to 28th, it's not going to be a large group. I've got a maximum of 6. And we're going to talk about airway issues primarily. But with 6 people, my 2-day course is about a day and a quarter. We're gonna have dinner together. We're gonna walk around the water. We're going to have smoothies in the morning. We're gonna sit in the hot tub and we're gonna talk about whatever it is we talk about. It could be life. It could be running a practice. It could be, there's plenty of time for people to do more than just one little thing. And what I want to do is develop a community of people who support each other. They have a problem. They call somebody in the group and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Mm-hmm. Or they bring it to the group and say, well, I'm struggling with this. I don't know what to do. But it has to be a safe spot. It can't be.
It has to be a safe place, which is so important. Yeah.
Masses of people. It has to be a smaller group. And then you can get real.
Yeah.
That's where it happens, because every website, you'd think that the office was Shangri-La. Everybody's smiling and happy. They picked the one picture where everybody was smiling and put it on the website. And we know that's not the case.
Yes, so
you
true.
know that's not. Even if it is most of the time, it isn't all the time.
Right.
So it's April 25th. And you know what? Do you have
I'm going to go ahead and see if you can share your screen. Can you?
I've got it down that I'm sharing it.
Oh, okay, good. So I can see it. There you go.
That's my contact. That's my contact information.
Beautiful. So those that aren't watching on the YouTube channel and they're listening on a podcast, is Dr. Chmura's website is eggheadortho.com.
I don't know why the staff thought that was a good idea.
I think it's cute. I think it's catchy. But you're so right. These let me give your email to director@eggheadortho.com, Dr. Lou @eggheadortho.com. And then is this your Instagram handle @eggheadortho?
Yes.
Okay.
And the Calendly reference is www.calendly.com/eggheadortho. If you go there, we can set up a 15-20-minute call and just, get an idea of what you're struggling with. If you have questions about the retreat, I can answer, what are we going to cover on this or what are we going to cover on that? We'll talk about appliances, honestly, but that's not the focus. Whereas when I went to all these general dental courses, it was general stuff. And here's the appliance that you should use, the only appliance you'll ever need.
That is just a non-existent thing. And I mean, everybody's like, well, what expander to use? I'm like, it depends. It depends. That's the answer. Right. And people just don't want to hear that sometimes, but that is the truth. It depends on the patient.
If they want, I did an article for the JCO on this topic. And if they want a copy, they can email me and I'll send them a copy of the.
Well, I'll also put all your links in the podcast description as well for everybody. I just love having you on here. You're such an authentic, caring, compassionate human being, Lou. And
thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. And it's on this journey, I'll tell you what's my favorite, other than helping patients and figuring out my own legacy, not only for like my family, my children, my practice, but the ripple effect in your community. That's your legacy. The ripple effect with other healthcare professionals, with patients, with your team, how it affects their family. I mean, there's just such a ripple effect as to how we're leaders in the community and within our practices. And I tell you, I love your retreat idea, because that is where, like an ASAP pathway, we have a course. Absolutely. We're going to talk about diagnosis, treatment planning, but where the learning really happens is after 4:00 when we all go to dinner and we're all sitting around talking I'll have to take that hot tub idea you got, but just when we're just all being together and having that safe space just to have real, authentic conversations. So good for you for coming up with this. And like we said, we got to figure out a way to collaborate more with each other and figure out how we can help you, you help us. And I had some questions, 3 personal questions before we go today. I like to just dive in a little deep with people when here we go, drum roll. What was the first job you ever had?
I believe it was fried chicken. I cooked fried chicken at the Little Red Hen.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure that was the first job.
How old were you?
Oh, would have been 14, 15.
14 and operating a fryer for fried chicken. Nowadays, I don't know if they would allow that.
There's a story that goes with that.
Oh, I bet you learned a lot.
Can I tell you about one of my other jobs, though, real quick?
Yeah.
So that was, that was way back when. And there was a summer where I couldn't get a job. And my friend Gene Sweetapple and I got this old trailer. We got a trailer hitched attached to my dad's Pinto. We hooked it up, had my neighbor paint clowns and stuff on it, bought candy and drinks, and just drove around to all the softball games, hoping to sell all of our stuff out as an entrepreneur. That was early on that I wanted to be in charge of my fate.
Yes.
So that was way early on. We lost a ton of money, and we sunk the trailer in the Detroit River. But
well, you lost me at clowns painted all over the car because I am afraid of clowns.
Are you okay? Maybe that was our problem.
Maybe
bad marketing.
That was the problem. It was the creepy clowns on the car. What is your favorite ice cream flavor?
As a benefit of having sleep apnea, I also got type 2 diabetes.
Oh, well, maybe you're not having some ice cream then.
And I don't have as much ice cream as I used to, although that's my favorite dessert. So right now, it's the reduced sugar orange sherbet from Publix. Okay.
Ooh.
That's what I do. But I just bought something called a Ninja Creamy. It's coming tomorrow.
I just talked about that with my son yesterday. He goes, "What are you talking about?" Because he loves protein shakes.
Yep. So this is like protein shakes that turn into ice cream. So I'll keep you posted. Next time we talk, hopefully I'll have better ice cream stories.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it because I saw my associate, Emily, she sent me on Instagram this Ninja Creamy thing. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "That looks awesome." She's like, "It's healthy. It makes like ice cream out of your protein shake, basically." And I'm like, I got to get one of those.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Yeah, keep me posted. And then what was your favorite activity as a kid? Like, I can't wait to do this. Like, what did you just love looking forward to when you were a kid?
We lived on a street about a half a block from the schoolyard. And I remember it wasn't one specific thing. I just remember all day long, I would start walking and there were kids all the way, and we'd just collect. And by the time we got to the end of the street, we'd be playing flag football or touch football, or we'd go play tennis. I shouldn't say and we'd go play tennis for 4 or 5 hours. And then at the end of the day, just to stay in shape, I would run a mile. Right.
Good, great.
It was a great, back then, it was come back when the streetlights come on.
Yes, I can still hear the sound of the buzzing of that streetlight when it would flicker, and you would hear the streetlight, and I would like, "Oh, we got to go." And even then, we didn't want to go home. We weren't done.
That's right.
We weren't done.
That speaks to your vitamin D thing.
Yes, it does.
We got plenty of vitamin D. We were out all day, whereas now kids they got their heads buried into their electronics.
Or even if they are outside, we're just lathering them up, blocking out UVB rays. So it's we got a ways to go, Lou, but we're getting there. At least we're figuring things out. thank you so much for joining me, friend. And
Thank you for having me. Appreciate
absolutely. Absolutely. We'll have to have you back and have some more fun conversations. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
it. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
This podcast would not be possible without the inspiration of my dad, Dan Becker, and creative direction and editing from the talented Jason Becker, Benjamin, and Judah Walker. To stay connected and keep the conversation going, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and visit our website at asappathway.com. And remember, the information in this podcast is for educational purposes only. It's not intended to be used as medical advice to replace your healthcare provider's diagnosis or recommendations.